Hello, everybody, and welcome to KBC's Bible study, looking at characters in the Bible. And today, the focus of our character study is Pharaoh, the leader of Egypt at the time of the Exodus led by Moses. A strange choice, you might say. Our character studies normally focus on perhaps someone who exemplifies a good relationship with God, but sometimes it's good to look at someone who perhaps does the opposite of that as a case study in what not to do. As the writer of our devotional, Carl Beach, says, this story is a masterclass in how not to lead a people. It's worth saying at this time, of course, that there have been many positive tributes to Queen Elizabeth II. And one of the many things that was said of her was her wisdom in leadership and how she always seemed to have the right thing to say in a crisis, providing us with a good example of leadership, perhaps. Well, this is the opposite. We read the whole story in around about Exodus 3 to 12, and by this time the Israelites had been in Egypt for around about 400 years. And during that time they'd become very numerous, and the Egyptians, perhaps worried that they would become more numerous than them and more powerful, tried to tackle that in a number of different ways, forcing them into slavery, for instance. A more extreme measure was killing all the baby boys at the time of Moses' birth, and we know how he was saved. But we know something about what the pharaohs of Egypt were really capable of. You know, it was a ruthless culture, sometimes brutal. And in that culture, as a leader, you couldn't be seen to be passive or weak. You had to be decisive, ambitious, strong, persistent to achieve your aims, and confident in your own abilities. And our Pharaoh, the Pharaoh at the time of the Exodus, was certainly all those things. And those qualities in themselves are not bad things. You can argue that the Apostle Paul demonstrated most of those qualities. In his mission journeys, for instance, he was decisive, acting on his convictions. He was aspirational, to reach people with the gospel, to plant and build up churches. He was persistent, not giving up in the face of opposition and persecution. Confident, standing up, arguing his case. And you can say that all those things are good leadership skills. However, there are negative manifestations of all those characteristics. Decisiveness, for instance, when misused, can manifest in inflexibility, ruthlessness, domineering behavior, making the wrong decisions based on the wrong information. And we can see Pharaoh doing that time and time again when he dismisses Moses, saying, for instance, in Exodus chapter 5, verse 2, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." Oh, very decisive, but he didn't listen. He's making the wrong decisions based on the wrong information. So how many wrong decisions have we seen in our experience, sometimes of epic proportions, and the result is hurt and destruction? And we could point to many examples in our world today, couldn't we? What about ambition? Well, if you have an aim and aspire to be something, to do something good, well, that's good, isn't it? We call that ambitious or aspirational. And Paul in Philippians 3 verse 12 said he pressed on to take hold of that which he was chosen for. So he wanted to fulfill his purpose. That's a good thing. But a misuse of that quality can sometimes become selfish ambition, scheming, not caring about anything else but oneself. That's a kind of a seizing the day, but for myself, not to make the most of the days, which is a biblical idea. But Pharaoh just wants to seize the day for himself. So he tries to scheme his way out of the conflict somehow. Halfway through, when the plagues start coming through, Moses says, okay, tomorrow I'll let the people go. Tomorrow comes, and of course he doesn't. He goes back on his promise. You cannot trust him. He does try to kind of maintain a sense of control, but he does it out of deceit. And ultimately that's destructive because no one can trust you in the end, not even your own people. And we see that today, don't we, in various different guises, both local and national. Likewise, persistence, that's a good thing, but only when you're persistent about the right things. When you're persistent about the wrong things, it can only lead to disaster. So when we stubbornly stick to our guns, inflexible, self-willed, headstrong, well, about the wrong things, we get it wrong, don't we? Pharaoh refused to budge, like King Canute, telling the tide to go back, but the end is inevitable. And confidence, similarly, not a bad thing, but when it's misused, it can manifest as pride. Carl Beach says that men are notoriously bad for digging their heels in. We are masters at being stubborn, often refusing to budge, even though we know we're in the wrong, and it causes damage to people around us, whether at work or at home. Well, Pharaoh, the mighty and feared leader, hailed as a godlike figure, found out the hard way that pride is a lethal weapon against oneself. And we know what happened. 11 plagues later, Pharaoh finally lets the people go. But he pays a huge price for his pride. And even then, having made the decision to let them go, he regrets it, pursues the Israelites into the desert, and ultimately into destruction, into the Red Sea. It's a testament to how destructive that kind of obsessive control can be. Case study from today? Well, we see many examples of how relationship, that sort of destructive, obsessive control can be in personal relationships, but also on the world stage in politics when leaders square up to each other. And Carl Beach points us to this verse in Philippians, chapter 2, verse 3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. If we did this, he says, our homes and our places of work and our countries would be far better places to be. And he says, leaves us with this thought. If you're currently digging your heels in, well, dig them out. Jesus taught, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. The proud, well, they just come to ruin. Well, thank you for listening. God bless and bye for now.